How's it going, everyone? Today I want to talk about 2 things about fasting no one has ever told you. But before we jump in and get started, as always, please like this video, please share this video, please subscribe to our channel because your support is important and we appreciate it. And of course, selfishly, it helps with our channel and our algorithm. But let's jump in. Intermittent fasting has something that's been really popular for a while because people want to regulate their blood sugar, they want to regulate their weight, they want to feel better, look better, and so forth. But the problem is, I think, again, we're taking a concept and we think that we can force our body into autophagy. We can force our blood sugar into regulation. We can force our nervous system into regulation. We can force our weight into regulation by cutting our feeding window beyond where it should be, or cutting our calories or fasting, whatever you want to call it, right? Because there's many forms of it. But here's the problem. You can't force your body into anything. Our environment, our habits, behaviors, which you'll hear me say over and over and over again, dictates our biology. Your external environment dictates what's going on inside. So if we have blood sugar issues, insulin issues, glucose issues, leptin issues, which is what we're really saying, we have weight issues, we have sleep issues, we have nervous system issues, or we just don't feel good, right? We know that how we're living our story is creating our biology because these inputs dictate the outputs and creating the labs or how we feel that we don't like. So if we don't change, nothing's going to change biologically. Yes, you might be losing weight. Yes, you might getting these perfect labs. But the second you stray from this fasting diet, what's going to happen? 99% of the time, your issues are going to come back. Now, here's the thing. The state of your physiology, right? Where you're at. Oh, I have PCOS. I have insulin resistance. I feel chronically stressed, whatever it is, right? The state of your physiology dictates how you should live and eat. When I say live, that includes everything, including eating. It should dictate how you live, right? Because we have to influence our body back to homeostasis with our habits, behaviors, and so forth. I think people strangle nutrition and think that it's the only piece, and it's not. What we see is there's so many other pieces, and when people focus on these foundational pieces, when they get to the nutrition piece, it automatically falls into place because now we've changed the state, and now the food is going into a just slightly more regulated system. Where you live and the season is the second thing that dictates how you live, right? As I've said before, in the summer, because the days are longer, more light, we produce more AMPK, we produce more insulin, we're more metabolic, more growth, we're more active, we can handle seasonal foods, seasonal carbs, just obviously depends on where you live, because our body is prepped for it, right? We're getting more sun, our systems are more activated, we're more metabolically flexible. But in the winter, shorter days, we produce more mTOR, more darkness, more melatonin. It's the season of melatonin. We produce less insulin. So winter, in a sense, we're less active. We stay inside more, even though we should get outside. There's obviously the sun is there no matter if there's clouds, but there's less lux. But at the same time, how we live needs to change. Our activity, how we work out needs to change. How we move needs to change. How we sleep, our feeding window, our fueling window, and the types of foods we eat needs to change. That doesn't mean no carbs, but it definitely means a higher protein to fat ratio to carb. And that amount of carbs in the winter is going to be dictated on that person's physiology. I find a lot of people over time can handle less. I'm not going to give you a gram amount, but people don't need, 150 to 250 grams of carbs in the winter when it's cold. So those are 2 important things. But let's jump into the fasting piece, because I think this is a very important piece that no one talks about. So there's 2 things that can happen. Number 1, again, what I'm saying here is essentially that if you're going to fast and you're going to eat less carbs, a time to do it, if you are going to do it, would be the winter, not in the summer, right? Not in the spring. It would be more in the winter to kind of align with your biology. The problem is, because I'm not going to sit here and say I promote fasting, but people use it as a therapeutic tool, and that is going to be used as a therapeutic tool. But I'm going to kind of Touch upon that in a second. Just like if you use cold therapy, there's no need to do it every day, but we should be doing it in the morning or at night to match our biological rhythm or circadian rhythm because our temperatures are lowest here. We shouldn't be really doing it midday. I'm not saying you're going to die, but at the same time, the more you align with your biology, the better off you're going to be. Because what are you doing? You're feeding your cells, you're charging your cells. And that's really the deciding choice between energy, symptoms and disease. Or if we use heat therapy, well, the sauna, we should do it midday. That's when our temperatures are the highest. We want to align with that. Same thing with fasting. But the problem is when people do fasting for too long, you can create a low leptin resistance. And that low leptin resistance is maybe you come in with a leptin of 1 in a sense, right? It's really low. It shouldn't be greater than 10, but most people are coming in low. And what happens now is these people become very intolerant to carbohydrates. I can't eat carbs, even a quarter of an apple, and I get dizzy, my blood sugar crashes, and the list goes on, right? We've created that, or you've created that. At the same time, what's happening now is you've created a scarcity state in the body, right? What this means is there's an energy expenditure issue because leptin regulates appetite and energy, among other things, but that's really what it does, and it's a circadian signaling hormone. So when leptin is really low, and we have the scarcity state, and it really depends on the person, but we could be locked in a sympathetic state. We could be even locked in a dorsal vagal freeze state. And the issue is we need to get our body out of that. And I'm not saying food is the only way, right? Our habits, our behaviors, and our light environment because leptin is a circadian signaling hormone. So we really have to use light to allow leptin to dock in the hypothalamus at night to really fine tune this orchestra. And then over time, we can use diet, meaning slowly, very slowly, increasing carbs over time. And this is something we go over in the nourished nervous system to get that person back to their sweet spot, as we call it, or homeostasis, right? And again, everything is so personalized because with this person, you would never want to do cold therapy, right? Why? Because they're in that scarcity state. When you do some sort of cold therapy, what you're doing, you're actually inducing a stress. You're inducing that cortisol response. You're inducing that adrenaline response by your sympathetic ganglion, the sympathetic nervous system, by the adrenals, and by a part of your brain near the brainstem, right? So we get this release to build adaptability. The problem is people in that state really can't handle that, so it pushes them over the edge. I've seen stories of people getting excited to do cold therapy, and they do it, and it completely crashes them. It completely crashes them. Why? Because they're probably in a scarcity state. The second thing that can happen from doing fasting is what no one talks about is the goal is to use it as a therapeutic tool, right? For whatever your goal is. The problem is when we have leptin resistance, meaning a high leptin, 29, 15, 49. I've had clients with 69. And remember, you don't have to test your leptin. You can. Sometimes you see it as high reverse T3, very high HDLs, high triglycerides, high insulin and glucose, PCOS, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, high CRP, high homocysteine, the list goes on, right? These are other ways to show, but if you want to test it, you can test it. But when we have a high leptin resistance, there's an energy expenditure issue, okay? And the problem is when we fast, when we're in this physiological state, there's already a sense of stress in the system because the body doesn't know what's coming in and when it's coming in, because that's what leptin does. It docks in the brain at night. You actually have to support it to do so, right, with your light environment because it's a circadian signaling hormone. So we can allow our daytime programs to dock in the evening and the nighttime programs to come up, melatonin and leptin. And leptin docks in the hypothalamus and says, here's the energy status for the day. But if the hypothalamus doesn't get it, it perceives it as a stress because it perceives there's no energy coming in. So we have an energy expenditure issue and the low energy issue, right? It doesn't know what's coming in or when it's coming in. So the problem is this is when you start fasting and you do this, the body starts to perceive it as a stress. So a cascade of events happen, AMPK is released in excess, right? And now the body perceives this fasting that you wanted to use as a therapeutic tool as a stress. And a lot of these people will say, I have to eat every 2 hours, otherwise I'm dizzy. Or I have to eat at night or else I can't sleep, right? This is another sign of being leptin resistant. So now this therapeutic tool that we wanted to use, right? Because we're in a leptin-resistant state, which really controls glucose and glucose transport proteins and leptin and affects leptin receptors. So it's really, you're not insulin resistant or PCOS, you're leptin resistant. You don't have high blood sugar, you're leptin resistant because it drives all that. So because you have this energy expenditure issue, now what happens is the therapeutic tool actually becomes more of a stress in the system, and you have more cortisol fluctuations and more blood sugar fluctuations, right? So now it's working against you. The journey to become healthy now is becoming unhealthy. And this is why it doesn't work for some people initially, but they keep forcing it. Or it works for some people and then over time it doesn't and everything just falls apart, right? So it's not about, I think we as a culture have to get beyond just like food as the sole piece of the puzzle for healing. Because when we really look at it, our habits and behaviors drive our biology. It's that simple. So what are some things that you can do? And I'm not going to go into depth. I'm just going to give you bullet points. We go into these much more in depth in a nervous system program, which you can click in the description below. But leptin is a circadian signaling hormone. We have to start not only controlling our blue light, that's important, right? With blue blockers or incandescent lights or not turning on the lights or candles. But the key is people like, well, I wake up, put on my blue blockers, and I'm on my computer, and I eat within 1 hour, but you're never getting outside. Sunlight drives your biology. Sunlight regulates in the morning. That sunrise infrared regulates your adrenals and the HPA axis and cortisol, which has an intimate relationship with leptin throughout the day and at night. That UVA is key when we talk about those sleep and repair and regeneration, that nighttime programs, because it's affecting your neurotransmitters and on serotonin, right? Of course, getting out at UVB, but at nighttime, that sunset allows us to pass the reins from pituitary to pineal so we can go to those nighttime programs. So we're doing this consistently, which is key. The second thing is working on your feeding window, right? Making sure that you're eating around sunrise and around sunset. Now, I'm not saying you have to just pull up the rug and just flip the switch, but you have to slowly work up to that sunrise or back to that sunrise or work backwards to that sunset. Why? Because remember, food is not just nutrients, just like light is a nutrient, but it's information. It tells your body it's morning time. So we should be eating to tell our daytime programs to come on so we can regulate our HPA, HPT, HPG, HPG. We can regulate that cortisol rhythm. We can turn on all our hormone systems, neurotransmitters, dopamine to feel good, beta endorphins, help start to regulate that histamine cycle, which follows their circadian biology and so forth, right? And actually dock at night so we can turn on these nighttime programs. And if we eat at night, same thing with working out. We should work out more at midday, which I know is hard. If we eat at night, we tell our body, hey, wake up, it's midday. The problem is less light, more darkness equals less digestive activity. So when you do that and you eat at night after sunset, you're going to spike cortisol a little bit in insulin, which is antagonistic to leptin, right? So we want to work on that feeding window. I think the last thing, and again, we go into this way more depth in our program, is working on that fueling window during the day, meaning your food frequency in a sense, to make sure you're putting logs in the fire to create that sustainability throughout the day. So you're not eating every 2 hours, which can really work well on your insulin, your glucose, your stability in the system, but it creates more efficiency. So now we're eating something dense at your meals versus just yogurt and chomps and all these light foods people eat. And it's like putting logs on the fire versus sticks and paper. We're able to have breakfast and push to lunch. So we're getting that, maybe initially you're getting that 3 to 4 hour, but over time, when your leptin regulates, you can get that 4 to 5 hour push in a sense. So you have to work slow, of course. This isn't a fast process, right? Of course, there's more and more personalization to it, but those are three things that you can work on. Instead of just gravitating towards, I need to find a diet to fix me, the problem is your habits and behaviors and your experiences shape your biology. And if you want to reshape your biology, you have to change your experiences.